everybody. It's Steve, your friendly neighborhood lawn gnome. Welcome back to another video over here on That's Comical. And if you're watching and it happens to be a Wednesday, happy new comic book day. I know my voice sounds absolutely terrible, but believe me, I'm on the upswing. This is the best that I've sounded for the last 3 days. So I don't want to refuse to do a recording when I don't feel terrible. So Cammy is here with me for another DC animated adventure. How you doing today?
I am good. I'm excited because we're talking about my favorite superhero, Batman.
Of course. Yeah, so we're going to be continuing our DC animated discussion, revisiting, or for Cammy's sake, most of it for the first time. We're going through the new 52 storyline, which, as I said in the previous discussion on our DC animated live show, this is basically DC's answer to the MCU up until Avengers Endgame, I guess. So the last time we previously discussed the Justice League trilogy, but there was another trilogy that took place when this storyline began, and it was the Batman trilogy, featuring Son of Batman, Batman vs. Robin, and Batman Bad Blood. 3 movies that were based on recent Batman stories. And let me say, when these movies first came out, I enjoyed them, but didn't really like them as much as I wanted to. But Cammy, I gotta tell you, the more I watch these movies, the better they get. To me, they're like a fine wine. They only get better with age. And there's so many great things to say about them.
There really is. I think these were some of the better Batman films that I've seen, but I think that these 3 were very dark, and I think that you really have to be in the right frame of mind. You have to really give these some attention when you watch these films because there's a lot of detail. There's a lot of storyline to follow, and not in a way that you necessarily need to have a huge background in Batman, but it helps to have
Yeah,
some kind of understanding of who these
I
characters
agree.
are. But I do think you have to have some DC knowledge going into these 3 films because there are some guest, characters that come through that you kind of have to know how they interweave into the Batman lore. That.
Well,
Yeah.
you're right, but let's also learn this little fun fact. I watched these movies before I actually read their source material. So knowing Batman as a whole and knowing some of these characters, the movies on their own are great. But yes, I do agree with you. When you have a little bit of previous Batman knowledge, they do make a lot more of an enjoyable watch. And maybe that's because of the fact that now that I've read said source material, I like these movies even more.
And you've got one up on me because I haven't read all the source material, so I'm definitely not going in on that knowledge level, and I'm not going to try. For me, when we do these DC animated live shows, I just want to make sure that I've seen the film, obviously, and I'm giving it a good critique from not only a fan standpoint, but for how it unfolds in the animated universe.
And can we both agree that next to the Justice League trilogy in this whole new 52 storyline, this Batman trilogy is so much better?
It really is. Again, though, I hope I'm not being biased. It's just that these are best Batman characters for me, and
Right.
I really love when we see Batman and Damien together. I really love when Ra's al Ghul makes part of the storyline. There's just some characters that work really well with Batman's world, and when stories are developed around these ideas and concepts, it just makes for a really good, strong film.
Right. So the first movie is Son of Batman, based on the Grant Morrison story, Batman and Son, when Bruce discovers through a visit from Talia al Ghul that he actually has a son, the son of his and Talia al Ghul, Damien. We don't really get too much about Damien in the comic based on his origin stories in this said story, but we pretty much get a sense of where he's from. He's obviously the grandson of Ra's al Ghul, obviously are raised under the watch of the League of Assassins. So we definitely get a broader scope in this film, with a great start seeing the compound of the League of Assassins get overrun by a group of assassins who know the ways of Ra's al Ghul, but they're led by Deathstroke, who happens to be under Ra's al Ghul's tutelage at a time. And because of Damien, he feels that he has been swindled of his birthright and wants to take it by force. So we get this amazing action sequence in the beginning of the story, and everybody joins the fray, Damien included.
Yeah, and he's a powerful little fighter. You know, I didn't really give him a lot of credit because prior to this, and maybe you can help me out here, I do remember kind of when I became acquainted with this storyline, but I cannot remember the name of the film. When I realized that Batman had this bastard child and it was a Ra's al Ghul story. Talia was in it, but I cannot for the life of me remember what that film was. And we watched this probably well over a year, maybe two ago. I don't know if that makes any, if it helps recollect anything for you. But anyway, going into this, that's kind of, I already had the premise down. You know, I knew obviously who Damien was. I knew who his mother was. I knew that Ra's al Ghul was his grandfather. So coming into this instant action sequence, for me, the biggest surprise was that Talia had a brother and then how old he was. You know, like I did not for the life of me know she had a sibling. But that just goes to show you just how much age Ra's al Ghul kept off of himself over the years, and just kind of that fountain of youth that he was living in.
And we also see that there was a little bit of insider dealing getting to this point, and we see, and Damien, more important, sees that Ra's al Ghul was betrayed by Ubu, who is a character that we've known for a while, especially even if you didn't read the comic books, he was in Batman the Animated Series as well. So Talia basically says after the battle, we can't save Ra's, Damien. It's time to meet your father. So let's just say that when we found out that Batman had a son, there was a lot of hatred towards this character. I didn't really know how I was going to feel about him, but I always say, lovingly, jokingly, Damien may be a douche, but he's our douche and we love him. But I have to say, thanks to the brilliant voice casting of Andrea Romano, casting this young boy, Stuart Allen, to voice Damien made me grow such an appreciation for this character in the DC animated universe and outside of and in the comics. This young man gave such a wonderful personality to Damien, such an amazing dynamic with Jason O'Mara's Bruce Wayne, and so many other great characters, whether it's Alfred, whether it's Nightwing, whether it's Talia herself. This young actor was perfect, and I love Damien because of Stuart Allen.
I think that for me, watching his character develop here, because you get a very strong of his mother in this film, and you really get to see that dynamic, how he looks so much like Bruce, so much like him. The eyebrows, you know, you get a lot of his features, but you do get to see that assassin side to Damien in this, and just how close the grandfather lineage really plays in his life, and how I guess push and pull is a good way to describe it, where he's always wanting to please his father and do good by the things that Bruce teaches him. But in the same regard, that assassin lifestyle really just calls to him, you know? And so seeing how much time is spent with both parents in this film is just a spectacular revelation for his character, because it really helps you to understand the dynamic of who Damien is. And I love it. I really grew to appreciate him more as a character and his storyline, you know, just watching it unfold.
Yeah. And I love when he first meets Bruce. I love the banter, like the scene where he goes, I thought you'd be taller, or the scene where he asks Batman, I'll drive, and he says, no, I know how, no. Also, Alfred, right off the bat, becomes one of the best parts of the movie because of all of his one-liners. I love the scene when Batman says, we're having company, and Alfred goes, a sleepover, sir? Oh, goody. Like, I loved it. You know that you're in for a good time when this is starting to unfold after Damien meets Bruce.
And I love the fact that he remembers Bruce at that age and how he can connect to, you know, how much he is like him, and the attributes that Damien has that he's probably not even aware of, that Bruce definitely isn't aware of, because he doesn't remember himself much at that age. You know, he was very much grieving and mourning the death of his parents at that age. So to see that they have such similar interests in reading and, you know, just their lifestyle, obviously very different, but that gray line is really just, it's right there in terms of how much Damien is like his father and didn't even know his father for a good majority of his life.
And we take a look at the Deathstroke story.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about the whole plot with the mutants and including Kirk Langstrom, who ironically never turns into the Man-Bat himself because that's exactly who he is. Did you rewatching that whole piece of the movie? I mean, like, does it work? Yes, but to a certain degree, I think it might be a little off-putting for the story as a whole for me in Son of Batman.
And I think you summed it up very nicely. If you don't know who he is and what he turns into, then if for me as a watcher, not knowing that backstory, it is off-putting because then it doesn't feel fully fleshed out. You know, it feels like, okay, why did we add this? In the same regard, though, DC is very well known for putting a story within a story. It's like they feel that they have to carry on the story, and just giving us that story in itself is not enough. So here, let's throw another layer on it. And I think with the Deathstroke thing, you know, it doesn't really tie in anywhere else in this trilogy. So yeah, it can be a little off-putting. I do like a Deathstroke though. I will say
Yeah,
that. I love his character. You know, he works really well. We do see him in a lot of other films. To see his appearance for me personally as a fan, I was there for it. And then to have the character develop kind of that backstory about the mutants. Again, if it went somewhere, I just feel like it was kind of a way to have some kind of epic ending to the story. And you know, we'll get to that in a little bit. But yeah, horrible. It wasn't great.
yeah. I think really the Batman story with Damien really is the best part of it. I mean, I love when Nightwing first encounters him, and I know that there was so many people who like put up on message boards how they were so angry that they didn't get to see the fight between Damien and Nightwing. All you got was the phone call, and it's Dick saying to Bruce, I think I found something that belongs to you. And then you see,
Yeah,
Damien
you do
hangs on the
feel a
light
little cheated
post.
not getting that part of it. But I mean, anytime
Well,
Nightwing takes an appearance on this screen, though, it's golden. You know, his
well,
one-liners.
apparently, and I don't know where it can be found, but apparently there actually was a Easter, like somewhere, the animation or sketch of the fight is actually somewhere. I mean, you
Ooh,
see the
sounds
stuff
exciting.
in the credits, which is pretty
Oh yes,
cool.
yes,
But to have seen the actual fight would have been pretty cool. But you know what? When we get to Batman versus Robin, we sort of have a redeeming part there.
we do. Absolutely, yeah. So I don't think we got cheated, but I can definitely see in that moment, you know, fans going to message boards and complaining about that. But I just thought he being Nightwing was just placed in all the right places. You know,
Yeah.
he's obviously grown up. He's very much independent now. He's out of Bruce's shadow. He's trying to make a name for himself. Very much the playboy, much like Bruce. You know, that's kind of the vibes I get from him. But he's very well rounded. He's developed very well, and he's come out of all the trauma that followed him for so many years, you know?
And boy, does Damien know how to press his buttons, you know? I love the part where they almost have Dick drop an F-bomb. I love that scene.
Oh, that was so good. Then Alfred just cuts in right at the right time. I was like, oh my God, I love that so much. Yeah, and that's why I really love these DC animated films, because they really
Yeah.
are for the viewer, but they're for the child in us. You know, these are characters we grew up loving through Batman the Animated Series, and we get to see some of their storylines get richer and more complex, but appreciate little, you know, jibes like that. And that was just so well placed.
I also think what I liked about this movie was the fact that, yeah, we had a villain here, a villain there, but we really didn't need to have the villain be such a dominant presence in the book, in the movie. Rather, the end game of Son of Batman is looming in the background, and it's really more about a father and son development story, because
Yeah.
Bruce never knew his son. Damien only heard stories. So the fact that Talia trusts Bruce to take care of him, and again, as the story progresses, we see how important it was for Damien to go under Bruce's care at the end of the day.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you know, even when she decides who Damien needs to go with in the end, she's basically acknowledging how much Damien stands to gain from being in Bruce's presence, just how much he can teach him, how intelligent he is, how much of a skilled person, you know, he's just a very well-rounded, Bruce Wayne is. And she knows, you know, obviously being in her presence would mean a lot to her, but she knows it's not the right thing for a young boy to grow up in the presence of his mom. He needs his dad in this moment. So yeah, I love that dynamic. It's very much a father son, but I kind of like that underlying hint of the father daughter element to it too, with her and Ra's al Ghul, because it kind of does work for this relationship that Bruce and Damien are stepping into, as for the first 10 years of Damien's life, he had the grandfather influence, you know,
Yeah,
and that was just very dark and very dismal, and he was growing up to become an assassin. And so now to kind of have that understanding of the world, to have that vision, that final vision of Ra's al Ghul and what it really, his demise look like, and then to be battle handed off to Bruce, it's like this kid is going to be either really jacked up or he's going to be one of the best, you know, fighters out there, because not only does he Bruce, but he's got Grayson as well, which is really cool. You know, whether they get along or not, he's kind of like a big brother to him.
yeah, because the most important thing at the end of this movie is Bruce and Damien start to develop trust.
Yeah.
And that's the
Yeah. And it's
only
said,
way that you are going to be able to work with a guy like Batman. You've
yeah,
got to trust him. And he's got, but the thing is, Damien is his hardest project to date
but isn't
because
any
of,
child though? I mean, really, at the end of the day, that your
but,
child is going to be your biggest goal. You know, it's your biggest challenge in life.
but you know something? When you take a look at all the other Robins of the past, it's a little bit different with Damien just because of the fact that it's Bruce's son.
Yeah.
And it's also because of the fact that he knows the other side of Damien's family. So there's a lot that he needs to build within himself and to trust a boy that really has been up to this point trained to be a cold-blooded killer.
Absolutely. And I also appreciated the fact that I finally got some clarity as to how Damien even came about, because I'm like, this doesn't seem like the natural chick that Bruce would gravitate to. You know, she's really jacked up. So I'm like, how did this happen? So when they discussed about her, you know, putting something in his drink, I was like, okay, that makes total sense. But to see that he is fully disconnected from her, you know, he obviously cares for her in the sense that this is my son's mother, but there's absolutely no love between them, you know. So that's an interesting dynamic to watch too. So that plays a part in how Damien, you know, kind of how he functions, and where we see him potentially having ended up if he stayed on the assassin vibe or now in Bruce's care. How much of that is going to linger and carry on into his future?
And that's the other thing. You know, Talia originally comes into the Batman lore because Ra's al Ghul wanted Bruce to marry her
Right.
and bring him into the League of Assassins because he knows how talented of a fighter and how strong-willed Batman is. But Batman refused.
Well,
And
and
that's
that
why they're
happens for us
enemies.
again here. Talia kind of puts it on the line. You know, imagine the three of us together. We would be unstoppable. We would be, you know, an absolute dynamic, the three of us. And they would be incredible. And honestly, I would love to see that. I would love to see a film made of the three of them and kind of like an Elseworlds kind of feel, you know, vibe of if Batman had decided to take Talia up on her offer and go right off into the sunset and be a happy little family, what would that look like?
Yeah. But I love how in the end, you know, Damien could have gone with Talia, but he
He could
chooses
have.
to stay with Bruce because he feels that to a certain degree, he's learned everything from Talia. He feels that there's so much more that he can learn from Bruce.
I did find it interesting though, and maybe you can bring some clarity to this,
Sure.
that they weren't able to save Ra's al Ghul. Obviously, he was dead at that point, so they
Yeah.
didn't put him, you know, they didn't provide that as an option. What is that green lake called?
Oh, the Lazarus Pit.
The last, thank you, it was escaping me. I'm like, the green pit. So yeah, so when she goes in there, obviously she wasn't dead, right? Because she kind of resurrects, it appears, but maybe she wasn't fully, you know, full on dead like Ra's al Ghul was. Is that kind of what happened?
Yeah, because one of the few things that we have to harken back to is Batman Under the Red Hood. Remember what
Right.
happened when a dead person went into the Lazarus Pit?
Yes. Yes, I do remember that. So that was kind of my fear. Like, is Talia gonna come out this other weird creature? You know, because her eyes do whiten and they kind of glaze over. You know, so I'm like, was she really dead?
Well,
She couldn't have
well,
been dead because
no.
then Batman wouldn't have taken her in there.
But that's also because that when one emerges from the Lazarus Pit, there's like a moment of no clarity and full on insanity until you officially gather your bearings.
Okay. Yeah, no, I can see that. Then it was unfortunate. I didn't want Ra's al Ghul to see his demise, but I do think it opened up the story for what it was intended to be, which, as you stated, it is truly a father-son story.
Yep.
And it is kind of a young boy coming of age, learning that, you know, unfortunately parents have gone their separate ways, so now I need to choose who take on. And I think that he made the right choice, because had he gone with Talia, he would have fully fledged into the dark side. And I really, I say this because I'm still also thinking of that scene between the battle of him and Deathstroke. It so gave me Star Wars vibes when they were on all those ledges and stuff with
Yeah.
the swords. I was like, oh my God, this is so Star Wars. But
So,
having gone with Bruce now, you know, he can see what it's like to be the good guy, to give into those good advances and to remember justice over you know, any kind of demise.
justice over vengeance,
Justice over vengeance. There we go.
which
That's
is
the key.
which is the theme of the next part of the trilogy. So
Shall
fast
we roll
forward,
in?
so fast forward 1 year later, and we get to Batman versus Robin, which when I first saw it, I did not like it. But oh my God, every single time I watch it, I think that this movie gets even more brilliant. And it's loosely based on one of the darkest, most disturbing Batman stories ever written in comic books by Scott Snyder, and that's The Night of the Owls. But let's talk about that opening sequence with the doll maker. Question.
Creepy as shit, and I loved it.
Question. Did you see who voiced him?
I did not.
Weird Al Yankovic.
Really?
Yes.
Interesting. No, yeah, you're the one that always dives into
a
the voice actors.
surprise. I would never have imagined one of the funniest men on the planet able to reach deep down inside and get so unbelievably creepy and dark. He is chef kiss brilliant in that opening sequence as the doll maker.
Oh, absolutely. He's top notch, the creepiest Batman characters out there. And I love it when people step outside their comfort zone, because it's oftentimes when you get someone of a comedic caliber, when they step into a role, they just knock your socks off. So to hear that honestly doesn't surprise me. He did a brilliant job. Now knowing that it's him, hats off. You know, like you said, chef's kiss. I really give him all the respect, because that was a really creepy character, super creepy scene, and it gave me all the vibes of, oh my god, this is like a creepy horror movie we're stepping into. Kid's gonna be okay, you know?
And that's the best way to open up this whole story with Damien, because Damien is learning justice over vengeance, and you gotta give him like one of the worst possible scenarios for him to really be tested. Also love the fact that he steals the Batmobile at the very beginning of the movie.
That whole dialogue sequence between him and Bruce was brilliant. It was just great.
But also, some of that imagery and some of those little Easter eggs are even cooler, because the abandoned toy factory, Shot's Toys. Do you know who Winslow Shot is? The father of the doll maker?
No.
That's Toyman.
Oh, okay, so it's all making sense now. See, I love that you bring these little Easter eggs to me, and then I learn all this stuff.
And Toyman, especially in the Superman animated series, is one of the creepiest villain designs that Bruce Timm ever did. Like the wooden doll that the mouth doesn't move. So the fact that the Toyman's son would eventually become doll maker is even scarier.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and his size, his stature, his just kind of innocent, childlike voice. You know, there's so many creep factors. I love the ambiance feel of that whole abandoned town. You know, the backstory of it having flooded a few years back. Everything is just kind of dilapidated and falling apart. It's really eerie. And then you see all these little kids in cages, and you're like, holy crap. And then to know that he mutilated some of them to make these kind of doll-like creatures, it's just like, wow, we have stepped into darkness here. What has he got me watching?
There's also some wonderful imagery. Like, I love the part where Batman breaks the first cage, holds out his hand and says, "You're safe now, trust me." And he envelops himself around this little girl in an embrace. And it's so heartwarming, because that's one of the few things that I love so much about Batman. He's supposed to invoke fear, but when he has to handle children, you see how big of a heart he has and how he wears it on his sleeve, because he knows he never got to have that life that he always wanted, to be a boy growing up with his parents. And he feels for children. He cares so much for children, which is why you see, especially in Batman versus Robin, how much he cares for Damien.
And I think a lot of that stems from the fact that his childhood was robbed from him prematurely. You know, he has to kind of go back and in some ways forget for a moment that he was never really able to be 10, 11, 12. You know, he had to grow up very quickly, and I think a lot of that stems from his inability to have been protected by his own parents. So he kind of this need to protect other children, you know. So I love that dynamic of Bruce, and I see it often with Damien too, even though he is a little bit harder on him because he obviously wants to mold him to be on the up and up in society, but he is very endearing towards him. I mean, just even like the little things, when he realizes he's also reading, and just making those subtle little connections. It doesn't happen very often, but it happens often enough where I think it's meaningful to Damien.
Yeah, but that's at the end of that sequence. The most important thing is what happens to Dollmaker, and that's the fact that a new vigilante comes out of the blue, specifically interested in Damien, and his name is Talon. And he kills the Dollmaker. And he's basically
Rips
saying,
his heart out.
and he says, I know this is what you want to do, Damien. I know you are a killer. Come find me.
Yeah.
And then we get into a couple of other interesting things. The fact that Batman is actually dating somebody and really involved with this elitist member of the Gotham community, Samantha. But at the same time, he really wants to create a bond with Damien. But then we start learning about the Court of Owls, which
So
is such a brilliant creation from Scott Snyder. The fact that,
and that
yeah,
that was completely foreign to me. So that really took, I watched this film twice just so I could kind of get into that understanding, because I had remembered the comic book of the owls, but I had never, beyond that, been introduced to it in any way, knowing what out. So yeah, that took a lot of understanding.
but imagine the idea of the elites of Gotham in an underground society basically pulling every string. I mean, is that not what so many people feel about the world today? About how so many people believe that the country is not run by political figures, rather, it's run by elite corporations and extremely rich individuals. So there's a lot that's very somewhat realistic, but conspiracy theory driven as well. Because
I'm
then
a
we,
conspiracy theorist, and I 1000% believe that people that think that we know who runs the world were very mistaken. There
but
are very much secret. There are very much, these individuals that possess power and money and wealth and prestige to the depths that we can't
oh,
even comprehend it. Just
right.
generations after generations.
So conspiracy theories, meaning flashbacks to Bruce as a kid when his parents die. By the way, another very interesting Easter egg. This is the first time that Kevin Conroy does a voice, but it's not Batman in the DC world. He voices
Was that
Thomas
the
Wayne.
dad?
He voiced
Okay.
Thomas. Yes, I
I
love
thought
that.
I heard him. I was like, is
Love
that
that.
okay, cool. I was right
So
there.
when his parents die, Bruce believes that there's a court of owls and he tries to hunt them down. And he goes off the deep end to a certain degree. Like that scene where he finds an owl nesting in his house's attic and he shoots it dead.
Yeah,
That's
that was
very
really dark.
unsettling.
Yeah, I think something definitely needs to be said about Batman versus Robin being a very dark film from start to finish. There's a lot of dark nuances. There's a lot of kind of mini stories within stories, but obviously, like I alluded in the last film, DC has this thing where they always put a film or a storyline within a story. And here we have this Court of Owls, and it really does interlace in every aspect of this film. So yeah, that was really heart-wrenching, because that's not Bruce's he's more of the protector. Let's not resort to killing and violence and these sorts of things. So to see that have happened was just really tragic.
And at the same time, he's trying to keep Damien under control. He's not trying to coop him up. He's just trying to make sure that he's safe because he knows what Damien is capable of. And he knows that when Talon comes into the picture, that Damien's going to get so curious. And I love how Nightwing comes back into the film. He's technically the babysitter for the night. Love the scene where he's on the phone with Corey, aka Starfire. who we don't even see until a film later, a few films later. But I love that he's like, "What are you wearing? Oh God, the lace and the thong." I'm like, "What? This is not a kid's film." I love it. I love it.
No, very much not a kids film. None of these are kids films, but this one especially. Yeah, there's very much adult themes here, but it does make for a great distraction for Damien to lose the babysitter, if you will.
But let's talk about that climactic fight. The movie's called Batman versus Robin. Clearly, Talon gets into Damien's head, tells him that Bruce is holding him back. But at the same time, he also wants Damien to become a member of the Court of Owls, and the Grandmaster wants Bruce to become a member of the Court of Owls too. So they both have a lot on their plate, and it comes to a head in that grand fight between the two of them. And let me just say, the hype is real. When you watch that fight between Batman and Robin, there's so much emotion in that fight. You don't want to watch it, but you can't look away. And in the end, I think the right way to feel about that is you feel heartbroken at the end.
I guess. I don't know. I guess maybe for Talon, because I had hoped for better, but I think sometimes people are so far removed from society and the difference between right and wrong and understanding consequences for actions that some people can't be saved. So I didn't have great expectations or high hopes that he would come out the other side, but inevitably in the end, I went with the title of the film, and really, this once again for me centers around Batman and Damien. That ever evolving relationship, that building, that bonding, and also Bruce's promise to Talia about steering him in the right direction, teaching him right from wrong, teaching him justice over vengeance. And there's a lot of dark themes in this. There's a lot of choices that need to be made, and I think that put in the storyline simply to drive Damien's storyline and helping Damien choose. Do you want to once again lean to your mother's side of the family and that assassin, that killer? Do you want to lean into the dark ways, or do you want to listen to Bruce and learn from him and why you're here? So I think that he was a pivotal part of Damien's story. That's really all I saw from him. I didn't try to get too wrapped up into the Owl Society because I really feel like that is a story all its own.
Yeah. And we also have to talk about those action sequences because they're amazing to watch and sometimes very discomforting. When Batman engages with those three Talons in the museum for the first time, I don't recall the last time I ever watched Batman take such a beating.
Yeah, it was pretty brutal.
It's very graphic.
Yeah, he really took probably the beating of his life. And I didn't for a minute think he was going to make it out of it because, he was stabbed and punched. And there was a lot of brutality that happened within that scene. But again, it goes to show you, at the end of the day, Batman is my favorite superhero because underneath all of the armor and the exterior gadgets, he's a man. And look at how much he prevails time and time again, how many situations he finds himself in, and he crawls his way out of it, and he heals, and sometimes it takes a while, but he prevails. And for me, that just shows the strength that Bruce possesses.
And that's the other thing. The Court of Owls really is one of his hardest adversaries because they get into his head so much to the point where a trained owl can just swoop right down and almost claw his eye out. It's crazy how we literally see him at one point at his absolute weakest. But then we also see him at his absolute strongest when we get to the final showdown with all the Talons, and we get that Lieutenant Ripley moment from Aliens when he's in that gigantic bat suit and he goes, "I'm only going to say this once, you sons of bitches. Get the hell out of my house." I love that scene.
It was good. Yeah, I think this is a really good film. It's
It's
very
really
dark
great.
and but yeah, it's so good. And I think this is absolutely perfect for spooky season. So if you
Yeah.
are in for something Halloween-ish, but it doesn't lie heavily on Halloween themes, but it gives that ambiance, it gives that feel, but it's not too heavy. This is a great film to
Yeah, you're
time
gonna
of
get
year.
a very atmospheric, very
Yeah,
unsettling movie. That's what this movie does. It has a lot
absolutely.
of unsettling moments. And
Absolutely.
there's a massive creep factor.
Oh God, yes, yes. This is probably one of the creepier Batman films.
So then we get into the final installment, which is Batman Bad Blood. In my opinion, the weakest of the three, but still a very good film, which basically gives birth to the now well known within the comic books infamous Bat family, where
Mhm.
Batman now has a network of people to rely upon when he needs help. And it starts with his mysterious vanishing through the encounter of a group of the most unusual assembled Batman villains led by this new guy named Heretic. I mean, I had never seen a Batman film with Killer Moth. I mean, I'd seen Firefly a couple of times. This was the first time we ever get introduced to the Calculator, who's nothing but a guy who just knows his numbers. But let me ask you, Cammy, were you happy to see that your good old friend Mad Hatter was part of the group?
Of course. Anytime he graces the screen, I rejoice. It's nice because I don't feel he gets a lot of screen time. So yes, I think he had a great role and I think he was conniving as ever. And it really did fit. I think that, as you stated, this is the weakest of the three films for me, but there was a lot of character development here, especially opportunities for character development in Nightwing, and just kind of how it built that family dynamic that we kind of get in the finality of this film. So yeah, I wasn't really impressed with Heretic. I didn't think that he was that strong of a villain. I think he was kind of, if anything, very weak because he relied on his constituents to kind of
He dies in
protect
the
him.
middle of
And
the movie.
absolutely, yeah. But I'm kind of referencing that opening scene, I'm just like, okay, who is this guy? But I just didn't think that he was that strong of a villain to lead on anyways. And so to see his demise, I was like, okay, good, bye.
So he's actually in a comic book called Batman Incorporated. And in the comic book, he actually kills Damien. Damien dies at one point. So
Interesting. I
he's
wouldn't see
he's
him as the one that kills Damien though. He's
well,
a weak villain.
Damien kills Damien.
Oh yeah.
Kind of makes sense.
Yeah. Okay.
But
I don't know.
what we do
It
find
was
out, what we do find out here is that at the end of the day, we find out through all three of these films that in the end it was Talia all along, and she didn't have the best intentions for anybody. Not for Bruce, not for Damien. She just wanted to just continue what her father started.
yeah, this is kind of where you get that understanding, like who is she? This is kind of that right hand, left hand thing because for most of her appearances, I'm on her side. I don't think she's a horrible person. I think it's how she was raised, but you definitely see her as the supervillain here. This is completely driven by her. This is her mission. This is what she wants. You kind of see how how she's almost happy about what she's doing to Bruce. She's kind of um him in a way and torturing him, and keeping him away. It does again though bring more development to Nightwing and to Damien, and we get to see other sometimes I do think it's important to pull Bruce out of the story just so we can kind of find our other characters arriving to where he is. To kind of see the illusion and the mind games that were played with him, it was just really heartbreaking on her behalf, you know.
So let's talk about those new characters, because this is the first time we ever get introduced to Batwoman, as well as a character that I didn't even know existed, Batwing, who happens to be Luke Fox, the son of Lucius Fox. Makes so much sense that he would discover all of the things that his dad was doing underneath the main scenes, if you will. And I like the character. I mean, he was probably the least developed out of all of them. I think this really was more of a way to develop Nightwing a little bit and Batwoman a little bit more, but has his moments, and they're good.
I wasn't a fan of Batwoman, I'll be honest. I thought she was a very over the top strong character.
That's the way
I
she is in the
think
comics,
that,
by the way.
okay, yeah, then I'm just not a fan. I don't know. She just, you with a villain or um I guess like a main character, you kind of have an idea what side of the fence they're on. I think I'm just confused by her presence all the time. Is she good? Is she bad? What is her point here? What is she trying to drive at here? And is she a friend? Is she a foe? She even at one point, I believe it was a conversation having with Batwing, and just because I wear the suit doesn't mean I'm part of the family. It might have been Nightwing she had that conversation with, but either way, it's like, okay, then what's your point? Are you just on this vigilante kind of motif? Like, what are you doing this for? So I think me as a viewer was just very, because this was my first introduction to her, confused by what is her stance, what is her point, what is she doing in all of this. The storyline with her father was cool because, you know,
Yeah,
obviously he's kind of a Billy badass, so I did enjoy his presence, but I was just very confused by her character because for the majority of the film, I think in my mind every time she was on the screen I was just trying to place her what side of the coin on. And I don't like a run of the mill kind of gray shaded character that you just don't know what side they're playing on, you know?
right. What did you think of um Dick wearing the bat suit?
I loved it, honestly. And I loved his dialogue wearing it because he made it very known to Damien that wasn't his calling. He was trying to, if anything, get as far from that image as possible. But in this moment, he was doing what he was born to do. And that
Yeah,
is take on the preceding role of Bruce when he's not around.
right. So yeah, I mean, it's a good movie. It's got some enjoyable moments. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I loved this. I gotta be honest with you. It was a little bit weird to actually see Mad Hatter lose his head, literally.
Yeah, that was intense.
But the best part about that is when Alfred goes, "My word."
Alfred's one-liners are always good. I think Alfred,
And I completely
his
forgot to
offer
mention,
comedic.
I loved in Batman and Robin when he's actually fighting zombies off with a shotgun.
Oh yeah,
Love the fact that he gets into
I
the fray
forgot about
because
that.
we have to remember that Alfred was a fighter back in his youth.
He was, yeah, absolutely. No, Alfred is a very underrated. I think a lot of people just kind of see him as the butler, and he's so much more. And I there was a film that Bruce does, allude to that. No, Alfred. I think it was the first film that we watched.
Yeah, yeah. It's the scene where Damien asks where the servants are,
Mhm.
and Alfred goes, "Just I'm the only one." And so Damien goes, "Just one," and he goes, "Alfred is more of a friend."
Absolutely. And I love that he acknowledges that. I think it would have been important in that moment to say Alfred's family, because he really is. I mean, Alfred has been the tried and true for Bruce for decades, and he's really the one I think that deserves all the credit and allowing him to develop into what he's become. I think that so many attributes of Damien do stand to evolve if Alfred that same time and credit for what he's capable of doing. But we'll see how their relationship develops over time. But
I mean, I'll let you
I
know.
love Alfred.
I'll let you know. I mean, let's also remember, if Mikey is willing to give you his skateboard, that shows you how important of a character you are and how wonderful of a character you are. But just so you know, in recent years, Alfred is actually now currently in the Batman comic books, he's dead.
Oh, sad.
Bane broke his neck in front of Damien.
Yeah.
And Damien was crushed. I didn't read it in the comics, but like last year, Damien finally got to give Bane his comeuppance for what he did to Alfred.
Fantastic. Well, at
And
least there was revenge.
I just love the fact that throughout the years, there was a relationship that was forged between Damien and Alfred, and how when Alfred died in the comics, at the end, Damien looked at Alfred as a friend and not a servant.
That's important, yeah. So I think oftentimes he's referred to as such, but he's so much more than.
Right. And at the end of the movie, we basically realize, and Batman more importantly realizes, that maybe being a loner is not the greatest way to do this. Maybe I do need a family. Maybe I do need help. And I love that at the end of the movie, when we see the bat signal, we see the whole Bat family suiting up and getting ready to go. And the best Easter egg at the very end is, off in the distance, in the shadows, Batgirl emerges in her Broad Street purple and yellow, and she's ready to join the Bat family too.
Now, see, I love Batgirl. I am not a fan of Batwoman. I will say it here today and forever. I don't like Batwoman. I don't like the fact that she's not readable. She's just very confusing as a character. But Batgirl is very much part of the Bat family, and I was really see her. I rejoiced when we had her little cameo at the end. But one of the things I did appreciate in the final scene is just the reminder from Damien to Bruce about who he was, what he should and shouldn't do in that moment. Because again, it kind of just tied everything together. And that was just really important to see it kind of come full circle.
Right. And I think that's going to wrap up another DC Animated Live show. Cami, I'm really glad you enjoyed these movies. I really, because I remember us in our first conversation about how we ended on a very sour note with Justice League Throne of Atlantis. And I'm really glad that these Batman movies were a little bit of a redeemer for you. Even though Batman Bad Blood was the weakest of the three, the trilogy as a whole is a great package.
Absolutely. And again, I can't stress enough, this is a great time of year. If you are watching, in our audience, have not seen these films, this is a great time to just go and enjoy and embrace them for the first time, because I think that you will really enjoy the ambiance for this time of year. But overall, I think this is a really solid trilogy.
Yeah.
And I think that it really does help to kind of develop some of these characters that we know a little bit about, but now we get kind of a little bit more full-fledgedness from Nightwing and even Talia. I really think we got a lot from her this go round too. So yeah, this is really good. I'm glad we did this, and great time of the year to indulge.
So with all that, please leave a like, leave a comment. We'd love to talk to you about these movies if you've seen them. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you're up to date with all of our latest content. And Cami and I will be back again for some more DC Animated Live shows in the near future. We have to continue this storyline. We have some new films to discuss as well. But in the meantime, we will see you in the next one.